Welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big LD42. Working on a loaded pitching slate, and we're kind of looking over salaries. And DraftKings, I brought it up, and it was just they're making it extremely easy to get all these guys if you want, and like Coors bats.
Yeah, I mean, it's pick your top guy, Scherzer, cash games for sure, maybe DeGrom, whoever you want. And then, this mid-tier, there's plenty of good guys, Montgomery, Manea, Dan Straley seems fairly safe, Paxton, even Pomeranz. I mean, a lot of these guys just seem way underpriced, especially on a course. I mean, you could make a good lineup with Scherzer, one of those mid-tier guys, and still stack most of course. So it's going to be an interesting night with a lot of scoring because you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah, and we're looking here. I mean, looking at the list, there's 8 guys with over a 12% swinging strike rate. I mean, this is going to be one of those nights where I would not be surprised to see a lot of pitchers just rack up like 8+ Ks in their start.
Yeah. I mean, what you figure realistically we could see maybe 6, 7 of these guys with 10 strikeout upside.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at Scherzer. We'll talk about Scherzer here first. This is a guy who's been dominant over this start. I mean, like we were looking, 6 or 7 of his last 8 starts have been double-digit strikeouts or something like that. Highest strikeout rate on the slate, highest swinging strike rate on the slate. He gets a Braves team that just doesn't strike out a bit, and he's also just not had a ton of strikeout upside against the Braves in the past too.
Yeah, and it's so weird because his numbers over the past month are arguably just maybe the best that I've ever seen. I mean, 39% strikeout rate. His one weakness that he's ever had is home runs, but 0.42 per 9 over that same span, giving up a 109 batting average, 0.55 whip. I think he has something like 4 times as many strikeouts than base runners allowed, something ridiculous, like 16 hits in 43 innings. I mean, sure, if there's a less than ideal spot for him, aside from a ballpark, I guess the Braves are it. But, I mean, on this slate, I guess I'm not really scared to fade him. I mean, in cash games, it's a different story. But like we said, plenty of guys with strikeout upside. So in tournaments, when you can save yourself a couple $1,000s, I really don't mind, going elsewhere. But still, that huge upside. I mean, we've seen he had 20 strikeouts in a game. What was that last year? The year before?
Yeah, I think it was last year. I forget who it was against. It might have been against Detroit.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not
sure Chicago. It was one of the two, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not to say he's getting 20 tonight because he's not. But still, I mean, he just has his upside is just insane.
Yeah, it's through the roof. And you look over his last 10 starts. Oddly, his worst games have come against Atlanta and Philadelphia.
Yeah, the ones where you figure are just an absolute lock. But I mean, Atlanta finally healthy now too. So, but really, the best thing Atlanta's done recently was I don't know if you saw this, but during the rain delay, Ender Inciarte was out tweeting to people about how he was confused because there was a rain delay, but there was no rain. And people were giving us suggestions like, go play in the slip and slide. And he said, I'd love to, but there's no rain. Everything's dry. I can't do that. And he was just bashing him for this stupid delay, which I still don't get it, but I'm sure they made plenty of money on beer, so whatever.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that was horrible. But Atlanta's lineup, I mean, I like the fact that they're playing Freddie Freeman at third and Matt Adams is still in the lineup. Like 1 through 7, that's actually not a bad lineup.
Yeah, no, it's really not. I mean, then again, I'm not afraid to play Scherzer against anybody. So, I mean, still, you're not playing any Atlanta bats, of course, in this one. But, yeah, I mean, if the $1,400 difference between him and DeGrom, same difference on both sites, or, a couple thousand between him and any of these mid-tier guys, if it makes a difference to you, then I don't really mind swerving in some tournaments because you figure he's still going to have huge ownership on this slate.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, Jacob DeGrom is, a logical pivot. You look at this Cardinals team; it's heavily right-handed. They're middle of the road in WOBA against righties. They strike out quite a bit. I mean, 21.5%. It's not like they don't strike out kind of like they used to, but this is easily one of those ones where I could see DeGrom racking up a ton of strikeouts. Yeah, he's away from Citi Field, but I'm not particularly worried. Busch Stadium, it's pretty neutral, I guess, during the summer times. I wouldn't lean heavily one way or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, if we exclude Scherzer from this slate, I mean, he's been the best pitcher over the past month. I mean, he's been obviously not the strikeout upside quite that we have from Scherzer, but, he's gone 9, 8, 8, and 7 innings in his last 4 starts, has that 112 strikeout game. But, if we're talking FanDuel, 52, 52, 52, 64 points. Had those 2 bad starts, but even before those 2, 62 and 58. So he's pitching really deep into games. The concern here with him and, in cash games in particular is the fact that you got to face Carlos Martinez on the other side, pretty much a pick 'em. So if you're going the cash game route, that in itself tells you want Scherzer, but DeGrom definitely a guy that I like a lot in tournaments.
Yeah, I do too, and I just feel like on these loaded slates, I think we dealt with this a couple of times where, DeGrom's fit, he's been kind of overlooked because of some of the other names around him, and he just goes out and, gets you 50 FanDuel points, he gets you 30 DK points, and it's like you're getting him at 15% when on any other slate he's, 25, 30 in tournaments.
Yeah, for sure. So, those 2 guys will probably take up, close to half of the ownership, I would think, in tournaments. So, but plenty of other options we can still consider here.
Yeah, you got Zach Greinke, Carlos Carrasco, Carlos Martinez are kind of the more expensive options. Greinke here, he's at home. He's come off a really strong start. Before that, he was kind of putting up some pedestrian numbers in terms of fantasy production. The Reds are just a team that just, I don't know, they're a tough team to kind of pitch against. They league average strikeout rates, 6th in the WOBA against righties, good ballpark. I don't know. I think Greinke might be the one guy I do fade in this top tier.
Yeah, he's got some pretty good numbers against everybody except for Joey Votto. Votto has just murdered him so far in his career. But, pretty good sample size, 29 at-bats. He's got 4 doubles and 3 homers. So that doesn't really scare me off. I think on this big slate, I probably won't be playing him at Chase Field either against a team that's got a lot of power. I know he's been good at times. Hasn't really been walking a lot of guys, 26% strikeout rate over the last month. So sure, he's got that pretty good floor, but like you said, with the average strikeout rate and the power, I don't think he has a ton of upside here. And I think tonight you need all the upside you can get.
I can just see like one of those starts where he goes out and just kind of 6 innings, maybe 3 earned runs and like 6, 7 strikeouts maybe. And that's just not enough at that price, I think, in consideration to all the other guys around him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I probably will not have Greinke tonight.
Carlos Carrasco, he's done pretty well against Detroit. He did just face him, but he's actually faced him quite a bit. He's one of those boomer bust guys. He's coming off a couple of strong starts in a row, but struggled against Texas, obviously. But before that, I don't know. He's always that guy that just people don't like playing on these big slates. So I can see him being really low owned if you want to go that route.
Yeah, that's kind of the appeal with him because we're talking about how deep Scherzer and DeGrom are pitching, and Carrasco really isn't. 7 innings against Detroit last time out, but 3 1/3, 6, 6 1/3, 5 1/3, 4 1/3 in all the games before that. And that was Kansas City, the White Sox, Minnesota, Baltimore, Texas. Those are not necessarily good lineups either. So, really only got hit hard in one of those games, that Texas game where he just got murdered in the first 2 innings. But, once again, I feel like on this slate, you want a guy with huge strikeout upside. And, if you're going cash games, you definitely want a guy who's going to pitch deep, and he just is never that guy. I think I like Carlos Martinez more than him tonight.
Yeah, I could definitely say the same. You look at Tigers are just that team where I don't know. We've watched a lot of bad pitchers go out there and throw some good outings against them over the last few days. They're average against righties in terms of WOBA. Hard contact rates up there. They do strike out quite a bit. So I don't know. It's one of those lineups where I could see him doing well. I don't know. If I'm kind of chasing some strikeout upside, I might be dropping down a little bit because there's a tier that we're going to get to where there's just a lot of high strikeout names.
Yeah, I agree there. And I don't think that Carlos Martinez necessarily has a lot of strikeout upside here either because, the Mets, a team that recently, last 7 days, they've only got 17% strikeout rate. On the season, they are, I just had it, I lost it, 19%. So, and a team that's walking almost 10% of the time, he still has that higher walk rate than what you'd really like. 9.3 in the season. So, that's somewhat of a concern there. And once again, pretty much a pick 'em between him and DeGrom. So I think he's a low-owned type of guy, but I'm not expecting him to have that monster upside once again. In fact, when you consider his price.
No, I don't think so either. And you look, he's going to face a fair amount of lefties too.
Yeah, he needs to get that under control.
Moving on. Drew Pomeranz against Tampa. Strikeout upside, sure, it's there, but I don't know. He's just one of those guys I hate playing at times. I mean, I think the upside's there, but I don't know if I can do it with Paxton right there in price.
Yeah, I mean, I love Paxton too, and I mean, Pomeranz has pitched into the seventh inning, what, 3 times all season? So, I mean, you better hope that he gets that strikeout upside, I mean, in the first 5 innings, because he's just not efficient with his pitches. They let him have a long leash. I think he threw almost 120 pitches. What was it, 2 starts ago, maybe? But I mean, there's just about a 0% chance he pitches deep. And I mean, I'm not really concerned because Tampa got to Chris Sale a little bit last time. I mean, they still struck out 12 times. Got a couple. Peter Bourjos hit a homer off him. I remember he homered off Kershaw once too. And I mean, that doesn't actually matter. But actually, I think he might have got Kershaw twice. But either way, I mean, sure, he's got upside, but we're talking 6 innings, like 7-8 strikeout upside. I just don't see any way he pitches more than 6 innings because, I mean, he never does.
No, and that's the thing you got to hope. You just basically got to hope that he racks up those strikeouts and he doesn't allow a ton of base runners, because those base runners really do add up and they kind of drop you down a couple of points. So you look at the Rays, I mean, 21st in WOBA, 27% strikeout rate against lefties. They're starting to kind of get into that routine where last year you just automatically plugged in southpaws against lefties or against Tampa. I don't know if that's going to be quite the case with Pomeranz tonight, but I don't know. I probably won't have any shares. I just think I like Paxton a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, they still have a couple guys that hit lefties pretty well, I mean, throughout his career, not so much recently, Longo hits lefties pretty well. Tim Beckham's hurt right now, isn't he? Is he day-to-day right now?
Yeah, I think he's been banged up.
An ankle injury. I mean, he's got some good numbers against lefties if he plays, and I guess that gives him a little bit of a palm and a little bit of a boost if he doesn't go. But, I mean, you're not trying to just avoid him. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't think he's a guy I'm too high on in this slate.
No, I don't think so either. I wouldn't be surprised to see a decent start, but I think with Paxton pitching at home against Oakland, who once again they do strike out quite a bit against lefties as well. That's just kind of what you're after. So I mean, I don't know. I just prefer Paxton in terms of a similar price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Paxton's another guy that hasn't pitched deep a whole lot of times this year, but I mean. He had 8 strikeouts against Oakland in a bad start earlier this season. I mean, gave up 5 earned runs in that one. But, I mean, you look at what they do against lefties, and like you said, it's pretty bad. I mean, almost 26% strikeout rate. And, over the past week, they're striking out 30% of the time. I mean, the walk rate's high, but really just no power. I mean, you got those guys, Healy, Chris Davis, pretty much the only 2 guys you worry about with some power upside in that lineup, I guess. And it's just, I don't know. I'm probably a bigger Paxton fan than I should be, but honestly, I actually like both the pitchers in this game as tournament guys.
Yeah, I do too. And yeah, Healy, I mean, if Healy was out, this would just make an incredibly good lineup. I think Marcus Semion's back. I think FanDuel hasn't listed as a pitcher for some reason, but I mean that's a right-handed bat. He's hit lefties well in his career, but still a high strikeout upside. So you look at Oakland, I mean, 3.5 implied run total. Paxton's a -155 favorite. He was one of those guys who's top 8 in swing strike rate and K percentage. So yeah, I don't mind him in cash games either. I think he's a fantastic SP2 because that 8,500 price tag on DK.
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally on board with that, and yeah, I mean, he's been. I mean, the few times he's struggled at Texas. I mean, Toronto's got some guys that hit lefties. The main issue with him is the walks, but the strikeout upside here is just too much for me to worry about him. I don't think he has more than 3 walks in any of his last, I think, 7 starts. So yeah, he's the guy I'm big on. Yep,
I'm with you. Yeah, and you mentioned, Manaea on the other side. His strikeout numbers have just been phenomenal in terms of missing bats. He's 9th on the slate in terms of strikeout rate, but top 3 in swing strike rate, 13.9%. This Mariners team is just, you expect them to be better against lefties than what they are this season, but they just haven't been that great.
Yeah, and I mean Manaea, maybe I'm saying this a little too soon, but I mean, he hasn't had a single blow-up start, where he just got killed this year. I mean, he has, 2 times he's given up 5 earned runs, but one time he had 10 strikeouts, the other time he had 7. So he still has given you a decent floor every time. Pitched into the 8th inning last time, pretty much 6+ just about every time. Walks a little bit more guys than you like, but you got to imagine, with Seattle, there's still that just, I guess it's not untrue, but I mean, they do have some guys that hit lefties pretty well. But I think he probably has half the ownership of Paxton at best tonight. And I mean, I think he's got a similar floor. So as far as a guy that's like sub 5%, I think he's really interesting play tonight.
Yeah, you get him at a really good discount on DraftKings, 6,400. And people, I think, might stay away just because they look at the last few games. You know, he's faced Atlanta. They're the team that doesn't strike out rate, but he worked into the 8th inning, allowed 2 earned runs. It was kind of an unlucky loser there. Houston twice, which, you know, he kind of kept in control, struck him out 8 times the first time out. New York, he made the one mistake to Aaron Judge. I was kind of mad because I played him that night in tournaments, and it was like the one guy you have to worry about. And,
right.
You know, he didn't get around. So he's kind of faced some tough opponents, and this one's just not as bad. So I like Manaea a lot there.
So you're agreeing with Logan Morrison that Gary Sanchez is not a threat?
Gary Sanchez is a threat, but I'm kind of disappointed to see him in the home run derby.
But would you rather have Logan Morrison, who's been a piece of crap hitter for a decade, then all of a sudden he's good and now he thinks he just deserves the world?
Here's the thing. What he said that he's like, I remember when I had 19 home runs, and he said that was a month and a half ago. So for that reason alone, in that statement, it was just put him in the home run derby. That made me laugh.
I would like to see Logan Morrison in the home run derby so that he gets his ass kicked because he's not that good. He's been good for 4 months of his life. Shut up, Lomo. You suck.
You know, when I go to like Tampa games and like you just sound like that heckler behind who's for the other team.
I'll be the guy completely sober drinking coffee and just yelling at the guy.
Keeping score.
Sanchez would have smashed that one. You suck.
Oh, man.
I'd be sitting there box score watching. Every time Sanchez does something Lomo doesn't, I'd be in his ear. Sanchez just hit a single. Keep the ball on the ground, buddy.
Oh, Jesus. All right, back to pitching. Dan Straley on the road. He's been a guy who's just been quietly good, I guess, this year. I mean, he's been better at home, but obviously going on the road to that AT&T is a great place to pitch. So Giants offense, they've been a little bit better, I guess, but still bottom 10.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a guy that I've been liking to play a lot. I mean, he's got over 24% strikeout rate on the season. You mentioned he has been better at home, but I mean, the Giants, the absolute worst team on the planet against righties somehow this year. And, you know, Straley's done a great job at limiting walks. I mean, hasn't walked more than one batter in any of his last 7 starts. So, I mean, again, a guy, he's pitched for 7 innings, twice this year. So doesn't pitch particularly deep into the game, but also just really has given you that safe floor where he hasn't gotten hit hard. And I mean, in that ballpark, kind of raises his floor a little bit as well. So, you know, I think that Straley's that kind of secondary, you know, SP2 cash game guy you can pair with Scherzer or DeGrom, whoever, probably Scherzer. If I'm going that route on DraftKings, I mean, you still have, I think, 3,800 left for the other guys, for your hitters. So I think that's not a bad way to go. I think he's got a decent floor. Not obviously the upside you want in a tournament tonight, but cash game-wise, I think he's a fine option.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think the only last guy that I want to talk about is Jordan Montgomery. Home matchup against Milwaukee. Coming off a rough start against Houston, which kind of expected. Dominated Chicago. I think that was a start where I was like, wow, you know, this guy is going to be really good. And I thought that before, but, you know, I was kind of looking at some Chicago bats. The wind was blowing out that night, and he kind of handled them. So it's like one of those times where he could really do that once again against Milwaukee. And I think the strikeout rate's even higher because Milwaukee just swings and misses a ton.
Yeah, and I mean, Montgomery is another guy who has given a really solid floor this year. I mean, hasn't gotten rocked in any start. I mean, his last start was probably his worst one. And that's at Houston. I mean, that's the best lineup in baseball, you know. So, I think it's a solid spot, you know. Brewers 26% strikeout rate against lefties. I mean, worries me a little bit with Braun being back and all of a sudden he's smashing the ball again. However, that just happened quickly, but you know, it's not, I guess it's not a safe spot, but definitely a spot where like all those guys we've mentioned are going to eat up just about all of the ownership. I mean, any guy we're talking about here at the end, we're talking 2-3% owned on this slate. So, you know, he could definitely be a difference maker with, and I mean, he's been able to pitch deep into games a couple times too.
Yeah, and you look, I mean, you know, Brewers right around a 4.2 run total. Yankees huge favorites, minus 214. And even the thing is, it's like, if Montgomery was 8K, then yeah, I think you take the risk a little bit higher and maybe kind of limit some exposure. But 6,500, yeah, say he goes out there and gets you only like 13, 14 DK points. You're not thrilled with it, but you're also not going to be completely out of tournaments. You're not going to be completely out of cash games if you're going that route.
Yeah, I mean, tournament-wise, you could go Manea and Montgomery and have 4,600 left over. Like, I think that was one you were mentioning to me earlier, too. I mean, it's any bat you want at any time.
Yeah,
Even
you're paying all
bats.
those top guys, but it's a fun lineup because you can just stack whatever bat you want, and you can still have the upside.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, those two guys combined are $13,100. Scherzer's 13 too. You're telling me those two guys together can't match Scherzer dollar for dollar? I mean, obviously they're taking up both your pitcher spots, but certainly a chance that they can end up matching or exceeding him there. And I mean, hopefully the bats can make up for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just get a start where it's like, they get you 22, 23, DK points, I'm completely fine with using both of them together. And you got a pretty good start too from your pitchers, and you get those big bats in there. You could be having a really high upside lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the drop off from pitchers past him. I mean, you got Junior Guerra at the Yankees. You got Adelman, who hasn't been horrible, at Arizona. You got Ricky Nolasco at Texas. Matt Moore, a lefty. I mean, I know it's in San Francisco, but that Miami lineup still kills lefties. Derek Holland in course. I mean, I think this is going to be a really fun slate of, high upside lineups, high upside pitchers. So going that cheap route, I don't mind it.
Yep, I'm with you. And we kind of been more talking about DraftKings SP2s, but those guys are all great GPP plays on FanDuel as well. Like Montgomery's 7.9, Manaea's 8.6. Like those are good mid-range options. Paxton's 9.2. So, you're going to have some flexibility in terms of what you want to do there too.
Yeah, totally agree.
So let's wrap things up for us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com, check out the great tools and content.